Welcome back to Watching the Throne, Episode 4, Season 1, Episode 4, Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. All right. I don't know why Jay's creating so much noise in the background, but there you have it, everybody. Welcome back to
Sorry, I didn't even think I made that noise. The bag dropped.
episode 4 of Watching the Throne on the Late Night Chat Network, the show where me and Jay watch Game of Thrones all the way from episode 1 to hopefully the end of the seasons there. And I'm watching it for the rewatching it for the first time. Jay's watching it for the first time, so always an interesting conversation. And yeah, we're on episode 4 now of season 1. We're just chugging along here, and this episode's a great name: Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things, and that's attributed to a line that Tyrion busts out during this episode. Yeah, so we'll kind of get into it here, Jay. We'll do our overview of the episode. We'll go through kind of what happened through the episode. Feel free to jump in if you got any additional notes there or thoughts as we go on, and then we'll give our overall thoughts on the episode at the end here, and we'll see where we're at here.
Interesting
Okay,
one.
yeah, this was a good one. I feel like they kind of took a I think this was a good character building episode. This one, in the sense that I think a lot of big things have been happening the past few episodes. There's been a lot of things and a lot of characters and a lot of what I mean, things happening in the plot.
Mhm.
This one, there was some big stuff that happened in this episode too, of course, but I think this was definitely, I think we're building on a lot of the storylines that we've already established up to this point with this one. Like we're reaching the middle of the season, and this is kind of where they let some of the stories kind of continue on from where they've set them up from, and we're kind of seeing things play out a little bit more, I think, in this one, right?
Building more of a bonding relationships with each certain people, and you can see
Exactly.
who's gonna be more
Yeah.
interacting with each other during the rest of the season. I think. I feel.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're reaching the middle, as I mentioned. I think it's 10 episodes of the first season, right? So I think, is it 10 or 12?
I didn't actually look that far ahead yet. I
Check.
know there's
You want to
10
check your stat
seasons.
on that, actually, if you want to. I think it's
Yeah,
10. If you want to go ahead and check your stat on that, maybe while I start this off,
yeah.
let me know. Okay, so this episode opens up with Bran dreaming that he can still walk around shooting arrows, and then there's some raven activity, I think, at the end of his dream before he wakes up. I don't know if that's like a bad omen. Usually ravens are,
Hmm.
but so it's not very clear what exactly the point of the dream was at this point, but hey, it's a dream, so that's kind of how we open up the episode. And then it kind of shows you Theon Greyjoy, who kind of helps out Rob there. He busts in the room. He tells
10 episodes.
Bran that Rob's calling for him. He wants him to kind of meet up with him, and he's kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. And he's like, well, I thought if I'd be stuck in this room with her all day, and he points to he basically nods to like the old lady that he's been in there that's been kind of telling him tales lately. I think I'd want a reason to leave this room, right? So Rob's demanding it, so you got to get ready and we get Rob, and then this is when he calls upon someone that Jay actually screwed up because he kind of was watching ahead of last episode, and he brought him up last episode. So I do want to mention the fact that he didn't show up last episode. He actually shows up for the first time this episode. But when he
Yeah.
brought him up, when he brought his name up last episode, I'm like, oh yeah,
I think it kind of threw you off, or you played it off. You were doing a good job of it. I noticed you covered it up after you.
but I caught it. I caught it this time around because I also started watching episode 4 when we started talking about episode 3 last time. So we got to really watch it on that
Mhm.
in that sense. But Hodor gets introduced for the first time as like the handler of Bran, essentially. And yeah, when he calls upon him to grab him so they can be on their way, this
Mhm.
big burly man comes in, picks up the kid, picks him up and carries him out. So essentially, this Hodor character is going to be his handler, let's say, so to speak, right now, it seems like, right? So,
Yeah,
but he brings him out to meet Rob, and he takes him out there, and then Tyrion is stopping by because he's stopping by Winterfell on his travels back from Castle Black. Of course, we know that he was just over at Castle Black and he spoke to Jon Snow, and Jon Snow wanted him to check in on Bran if he could. So on his travels back with the guy from Castle Black, he stops into Winterfell to see if the rumors are true about him being crippled
yeah.
now.
And sure enough,
And sure enough, he's like, "Oh, okay, boy, it's true. The stories are true. You are crippled." He sees them, and Tyrion kind of gets a shitty introduction. Rob's kind of hating on him because I think of like the whole Lannister thing that's going on right now, and he doesn't understand why he's getting such a sour reception upon him coming into Winterfell. But he's like, okay, whatever, and he's talking some shit back and forth. And Hodor comes in, he's like, "Oh, if you could lower him for me, so I don't have to strain my neck as much anymore." Like he lowers Bran, and he says to Bran, he's like, "Listen, here, I have a gift for you," and he gives him a scroll, and on there is some plans for them actually to make up some sort of like a brace for him of some sort for when he rides horses, that he can kind of accompany him while riding the horse. Rob sees this act of kindness, and he's kind of like, "Why are you doing this nice thing for him?" And this is where the line comes out, and he says that he's like, "Oh, I'm very fond of cripples, bastards, and no." He's like, "I have a tender place in my heart for cripples, bastards, and broken things." Right, and being as who he is in this world, right? Again, he kind
yeah,
of shows him some compassion, and hearing what had happened to him, he was kind of like, "I'm going to do him a good deed," and he gave him that. And Rob's very taken aback by this, and kind of is like, "Well, yeah, anytime if you're Winterfell, we'll take care of you now." And he's like, "Oh, listen, I don't need your sympathy or whatever. I wanted to do this." And it's kind of like, "I'll be on my way. I'm going to go to the whorehouses." You know what I mean? So
yeah.
like,
Don't worry
but
about me. I'm gonna stay at the warehouse outside the
yeah, but
walls.
I like that. That was a good scene. I thought that was really it. Once again, I think he's got like a heart of gold, this guy, you know what I mean? Like he's brash and he's rude to the people that he doesn't respect, but he also the people that he does, he's very kind, it seems like, to people, knowing like, understanding, I guess, being looked down upon, like in this world, right? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like he's extended. Like right now, you've seen him already be very kind and a good friend to Jon Snow, and now in passing, as a result of that relationship, he's now being nice to Bran as a result of that, right? So you can tell he's not cut. He's cut from this different type of cloth than his brother and sister are in that sense, right? Because right
Yeah,
now they're plotting and scheming about the fact that they pushed this kid out the window, and he doesn't he's doesn't even know this, right? And
yeah,
he's just like, he actually cares for the fact that the kid got injured, right? He
yeah.
doesn't give a shit about that in that sense, right, Jay? I think
Yeah,
you.
no, I would agree with you on that one because he doesn't know yet that anything's happening. He's trying to figure it out, right? He keeps asking about it, but I mean, he's still trying to figure it out. So we'll have to see where that goes because that's a kind of interesting story, little plot going itself, right there,
Yeah,
right? Because that's a brother and sister. They're all part of the same family there, so it's a little interesting to see where that part's going to take them in the next few episodes. If not even in this season, who knows, right? Well, we'll see. We'll
yeah.
keep we'll keep watching and keep that going on. But yeah,
And then from there, we again go back to Theon Greyjoy,
mm,
and he speaks to Tyrion in passing, and this is when they actually, as they tend to do, as we're seeing in these first few episodes, they take this as a moment to kind of give you a little bit of history about this character, because we don't really have any history about this guy and his relationship to the family, the Greyjoy family within the realm, right? So like, these are one of they keep doing this where they kind of talk about this stuff, and this has been like, honestly, this has been like the most interesting part for me revisiting it, because this meant nothing to me, any of these things, the first time around, because these are fairly new characters that they're introducing to you watching this for the first time. But
mm,
Now that I have a little bit more context, these parts are kind of more interesting when they kind of talk about their past, but they also are telling you about a lot of things that happened, maybe that was pre-established, maybe from the source material, like in the books and stuff like that, things that we're not going to see on the show necessarily, things that have already come to pass, right? So that's kind of like, I don't know. It's you're not going to take too much away from this, other than being like, okay, they have a history, or this is what happened to this guy's family. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to kind of have the appreciation of what they're saying has happened to these people or his family when you don't even know these people, right? So I found that was interesting, because he speaks to Tyrion, and then Tyrion speaks about, Lady Stark. He asks about her and what's going on with him. Then he mentions that Theon is a lackey, and how his father, what would his father think of him, and and his uncle, the fact that they burned down their property at some point in time, and then he's like, it's okay, my father doesn't respect me either, and like he's basically saying to him like, what are you doing here, basically working for the Starks, because he's basically just like he's Rob's, like, lackey, essentially, as he calls him here, right? But you can tell that he's basically just helping Rob, and Rob isn't even a king. Like, he's a lord, yeah, but he's not. You know what I mean? Like, he's not someone to follow, but it seems like this guy's following him, Theon, as we've seen in previous episodes, right? So,
Question though,
yeah.
the Theon is the one that was sitting on the throne at the moment when Thing came in to talk to him after meeting the boy. Is that the one you're talking about?
That was Rob.
That was Rob, but that's the same family, right?
Rob
Or
is
no?
technically watching over Winterfell right now because his mother and his father are gone, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was, the guy that was watching over Winterfell because it was gone.
Yeah.
So
So that's Rob. Theon is the guy, the redhead kid, the one that's
in the room with the
yes.
three and the boy,
So
yeah, yeah,
Tyrion goes and talks to him, and then we get a little bit of background about the Greyjoys, who Theon is part of, and kind of like he talks about his father and his brother and things like that. But you don't really have context for those characters because you don't know who they are. But you now know that he is part of this storyline, or Sors's family, and they have ties to the Starks, and that's what I
yeah.
mean. It gives you a little bit of context and a little bit of an idea of who this guy is, but again, you don't really know all that much about him at this point, other than like they keep doing this with characters though. They're like, oh yeah, how about it, like even last episode when we talked about how they talked about the Kingslayer, and how like Ned's brother and father or whatever got killed by him, but you don't really know who his father or his brother, and you're not going to get a chance to meet those characters because they're dead, but they do mention them, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of connecting the dots a little bit about a lot of these families and their relationships, past occurrences. Like, we're getting a little bit of context about this kind of stuff, and it seems like whenever they meet these characters, they somehow try to like insert that information into the conversation a little bit. You know what I mean? So for me, like, I kind of got a little bit out of this, but at the same time, even so, like, I'm like, okay, well, I understand he's a Greyjoy. I understand that his family is, knows the Starks. That's kind of all you can really take from this conversation at this point, quite
Okay.
frankly, right? So,
Yeah.
and then we get back to Castle Black. We're introduced to Samwell Tarly. He's the bigger guy, big fatter guy. He can't fight. John helps defending him, by after they start beating on him. He kind of sticks up for the kid.
The pig, a little pig.
Tells Sam he has to defend himself next time. It's not going to get any easier. Like,
Yeah.
listen, you need to step it up. I was happy to help you this time, but you got to kind of try harder next time. And Sam says he's a coward and he can't help it. So like, he's like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be Jon Snow's project now, clearly, like a JT project of some sort. He tried to help out the little people there. So he's
Trying to help out everybody in need.
yeah.
Fuck off.
Then we cut over to the Khaleesi, Daenerys. She continues their journey with the army. She starts talking about strategy, about possible war with Robert Baratheon, with Jorah. He mentions the reason that he slave traded was for money that he needed for his then wife, which he's no longer with. So that's interesting. They kind of talk about
And
that.
what's his name again? 100. Because I try to look and I can't
Jorah
match the picture of it.
Jorah Mormont.
Yeah. I'm trying to spell. I was trying to figure out the name, and then You hear them say it, but I mean, it throws you a little bit off, and it gets quick. I mean, they said it here and there, but yeah, I get it.
No worries. And then you also follow up with her brother Viserys Targaryen a lot in this episode. And interesting fact about Viserys Targaryen, Jay, that I came across, I didn't realize the first time that they mentioned his name, is that he shares the same name of the king from House of the Dragon.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I have it in quotes there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. He shares the same name.
Yeah.
Now, if you look it up online, apparently there's been other people along the bloodline that had shared that same name. And if you remember the show, Jay, everyone shares somewhat of a similar sounding name. So, like, it's not a surprise that even somewhere down the bloodline, there's already another guy named Viserys. But again, that's something I didn't catch when I watched House of the Dragon, because it's been so long since I seen this character. I didn't realize that connection. So it's kind of interesting. Right?
Yeah, and that's what I see. I kept hearing it, and I'm going, I heard this name before. Why have I heard this name? And that's not a name that you hear every day. Okay, I knew I heard Targaryen, right? But I couldn't figure out where I heard the first name from, right?
Yeah, well, that's because it was the.
And they talked about the sickness and this and that and all that from him. Because okay, I see. Well, I thought I was paying attention,
right? And then there's a scene where he's getting closer, it seems like, to the whore that he hired, that's been helping out, I guess, his sister as well. They get a
lot of horrors in this thing too.
Yeah, they get a little bit close, and she starts talking with him about dragons, about his past, about things that she saw in her travel. Something interesting that she mentions is that she came across somebody at some point that could change their face.
Yeah, that was weird, eh? Like a
I'm just gonna throw
shapeshifter.
that out there. I'm just gonna throw that out there. So she mentions, for whatever reason, that she came across.
There's probably a reason now. Thank you. But there's probably a reason now. But I was interested in that too, because that's not something you can even do nowadays unless you have just a phone in front of you or a screen or something, right?
So
to change the face.
As you know from the older, from the other show, House of the Dragon, dragons did exist at that time. Maybe they will exist again in this show. But the thing that, Jay, that you're going to start seeing as we go on through this show is that they slowly start peeling back the fact that there is magic in this realm of some sort, in some aspects. This is a weird show because they really straddle the line, Jay. I've always appreciated this about Game of Thrones, where they make you feel like these things could have existed in this life, in the sense that, like, they don't hit you over the head with it. It's not like right from the fucking first episode, everyone's fucking busting out magic spells and shit like that. But there is supernatural type of stuff going on in the show as it goes on. But they do it in such a way where they don't overdo it, if that makes sense. So it's not like yeah, that's what I really, really feel they do a great job of in this show, where you're like, oh yeah, okay, it's like what you get to the point where, like, maybe we're gonna be 3 seasons in and something crazy is gonna happen where it's like magic related, and then at that point you'd be like, oh, all right, yeah,
it's an everyday thing, yeah. Right. But that's what I'm trying to, like, I see it. I'm going, like, what happened to all the stuff from 173 years ago? Where did it slowly get lost? And I'm trying to see. I'm just trying to see how it all is going to blend in together. And I think that does it's a great job. It talks a lot about the director, the creator, maybe even the writer of the book.
Yeah.
And to make it all feel like, to watch this, it actually makes like it makes you feel like you're reading a book, because it's like almost like a slow burn, and they really get into detail into certain things, but not so much to give it all away. Right? I've noticed that slowly. And it's only 4 episodes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
and then from there, we cut back to Sansa. She's speaking about how she thinks Joffrey hates her now, and she's worried about her future with all that kind of stuff. And the Mad King's history is discussed, and Sansa says she would not forgive her father for basically what has occurred with this whole Joffrey and the wolf situation. Like, she's pissed at him to the point where she feels like she wouldn't forgive him for what has transpired as a result of that whole wolf thing and the thing with Joffrey. And then they cut over to Ned, seeing him in King's Landing, seeing him do business now with in Robert's Place as the hand of the king with the rest of the council.
Trying to fix all those issues. Yeah, that was interesting too.
And he can't keep the peace. This guy cannot keep the peace. A lot of shit's going down on the streets of King's Landing right now, right? Yeah. And he has to loan out his own men to assist in what's going down at this time. Like, he's at the point where, like, the army they came,
1,000 of them.
men are just like, listen, like we need help out there, right? Like we can't corral everybody. And he's just like, okay, I'll give you 20 of my own men to assist that I've brought from Winterfell for the time being in what's going on right here, right? So
Yeah.
like that, that is wit's end. This fucking Ned guy already. He's already had enough of this shit, right? So
Keeps asking where the money is to do this, but they have money to do. They have money to put on shows and then put
right,
on. You know what I mean? Like stupid
tournaments and
things.
everything
Yeah.
else. Yeah. All right, so now this is probably the most interesting part of this episode that's going to come into play here now, this storyline. Ned asks about John Arryn, Lord Arryn, the day before he died. And he was the hand to the king prior to Ned coming, okay? So, but
This is
then he
very good.
mysteriously died of some sort of a sickness, okay? So he asked the Grand Meister there, the council, basically, some information about what he was up to prior to his death. And he's like, well, it's strange that you asked me. He's like, we were very close. He used to confide in me. He used to come and we talked and this and that. And he came and grabbed a book for me the night before he died. And he's like, oh, really? I would like to know of this book. And he's like, because he's like, oh, I can't. He's like, what is the name of this book? He's like, oh, I couldn't really remember. Don't worry about it, dear Lord, and all that. No. I'm interested. I'm gonna come down. I'm gonna take a look and see what this was. So he pulls out this huge tome that's called the Lineages and History of the Great Houses of the Seven Kingdoms. Right? You got that, Jay. There you go.
Yeah. I wrote the thing that because that sounds interesting. It sounds like an interesting book. It's lineager. What did it say?
Lineages. So it's basically all the like the family tree essentially of all the kingdoms.
Okay.
Essentially, like, right?
Yeah.
So he's trying to trace something clearly.
Yeah.
He says he read this before he died, and then he got very sick for whatever reason. He served as the first hand of the king prior to Ned, and before he died, he kept repeating, "The seed is strong," is what apparently to the Meester. And then that's kind of weird. What is that all about? What does that mean? He's just like, oh, I'm not sure. I think he was just so gone at that point. He's like, I don't know. It seemed very sudden, this sickness. He's like, that seems very weird. Does that not seem weird to you? So Ned has his suspicions already at this point. He's like, this is strange. So then he goes into town. He suspects his natural illness, death. All of a sudden, what did he come across? Was he poisoned? He starts asking these questions, and he says, they talk about Lord Varys, these two guys, and then Lord Varys they reveal as a eunuch, which I already knew, but I didn't want to mention earlier on. That's the guy who's bald. That was the Lord Varys that we've met. That looked like
inside the whorehouse.
Yeah, he's the guy that has all the secrets about everybody and everything else. Yeah, so he's a eunuch. Which
is a eunuch that kind of unique?
No balls. No, it means you have no balls. They cut their balls off, essentially. A eunuch, yes. And then Ned even
nice.
Ned even mentions the fact that he thinks that he may have been poisoned. This illness seemed very sudden. He mentions to him, and then he calls out the fact that whoever poisons people is sort of like a lady's method of doing things, essentially. And then he also said, or he's like, yeah, the Meester's like, yeah, ladies or eunuchs. He's like, Lord Varys is a eunuch. Yeah, he's like, yes, I know this, right? So like, so again, he's trying to he's trying to
piece
figure
some stuff out together.
Yeah. But he definitely doesn't think that his death was natural because it was very sudden. He was obviously searching some shit up before he died. So did he stumble across something? What did he come across, right? What's the information here? And the seed is strong, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll come back to that. So they kind of bounce away from there for now, but they cut over to Arya. She's still in the midst of training. That's his daughter. Says that she mentions to her father that the royalty route is not for her. She says he talks about marrying lords, having knights and princes as her son. She says that's not me to her father, which I love.
Kind of deep. No?
I love this about this character. Arya is one of my favorite characters, and it's because she knows what she wants. Jay,
it's funny because back then, if they're dictating something that is considered, I know it's still not real,
but back then, there wasn't women knights and everything else.
No, the rest of them were treated like fucking women. That's it. They were treated like old school, like they used to do, right? Like I don't know. I know. For that to be that's like a real game moving thing, and especially in a TV show, especially 10 years? How many years ago now when this first aired?
Over 10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right in the middle of everything. That whole change and that whole move. Well, the move, that. I don't know, where I'm going with that.
Women empowerment, yeah. And not only that, it's about that even here, I mean, this is nothing compared to the time. Like the women were still considered honestly equals until like in the late 1900s, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and that's what I mean. Like it's kind of weird.
and even so, some people would argue to this day in certain aspects they still aren't, right?
Yeah,
But that's why it's interesting because she knows what she wants at this early age in this show that she does not. That's not for her. She doesn't want to be that person, right? So
yeah,
like
it's
you
pretty
said, I
tough.
think it's important that they did this, and they made this girl such a kick-ass character. Honestly, she's one of my favorites. So I
Well, I'd
think
like to see where she.
you'll see. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that's that. You get that scene, and then we cut back over to Castle Black. Sir Alistair makes Sam John's new watch partner up on the top of the obviously it seems like
under the
as like
wall.
a burden to him because he's kind of pissed off that he didn't train well, so he made him John's problem. And Sam's looking out over the wall in his place as he comes up there, and he's like, he can't see all that well. It's like, wow. And he doesn't like heights. John's just like, wow, you're completely fucking useless.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What
Like,
are we
what are
gonna
you
do with
doing
you?
here? What are you doing here? That's why he asked him, and then he
Make for
mentioned
good food.
he mentions a story about how Sam's father basically forced him there upon threat of death because he was like he
That
was
was fucked up,
desperate.
eh?
Yeah, yeah. So his father obviously not a loving man, that's for sure. So uh
No, he'd have him. What did he say? Ride out with the horse
yeah.
into the forest, and he'd be pleased to tell his mother that he wasn't coming back. Like he'd be oh,
So,
he'd have
so
such a look of
he's
laugh.
a rock and a hard place. This guy. This guy
Poor
clearly
guy.
isn't fit for this. Has no interest in it, and yet he's there. He's doing his
Yeah,
thing.
he's
Uh,
got to have a good part, though. I mean, I hope so, but we'll
well,
see.
I think you can tell from this episode already, though, that him and John become good friends. So
Bonding, yeah.
they're chopping it up throughout this episode, and there's a part later on where they kind of really laugh together, and it seems like they're friends already at this point. So
Mm.
Um, so Lord Baelish, he helps Ned realize that that there's a bunch of spies in King's Landing, essentially, and he notices his snooping. He notices that he's looking into this book and everything else, and he says to him, "I think you should go question Lord Aaron's whereabouts, prior to the death, with some people in town. Maybe talk to his squire." And then he tells him, it's like the smartest thing. He's like, "Oh, I think I was wrong about you, whatever. I shouldn't have not trusted you." He's like, "No, you were completely right not to trust me." He's like, first off, he's like, "Yeah, that was the only thing you've gotten right so far is not to trust me. But I'm gonna help you out a little here, and I'm gonna point you in the right direction." So he's like, "Yeah," but he's like, just look around. He's like, "That person that you saw in town, yeah, that's a spy." Like that person spies for me. Like he's basically just showing him that he's too honest for this fucking place that he's walked into. Like essentially, like he's like,
Yeah,
there's spies all over the place. How do you think I know this? How do you think we know your movements? How do you think I knew you were looking into this? He's like, I got spies all over the place. So he's like, just watch yourself and go and look into some stuff for yourself, right? And he goes to a blacksmith in town, and he ends up asking the apprentice, like kind of blacksmith there, some questions about his mother. And it appears that Lord Aaron came across Robert's bastard son, which
that's
is,
what I mean. I was just gonna ask. Yeah, if you were going with that way, if you
well,
got
that's what
that,
he says. He says
yeah,
that to the guy that was with him when he leaves. He's like, "That's Robert's bastard son right there." Like
the guy who's the apprentice.
yes, the
Yeah,
apprentice black, because he says like, "You have any interest in swinging a sword?" Blah blah blah. And he's like, "If he ever does, you let him know to look me up, like basically in contact with me." But he asks him all these questions about his mother, everything else. So I think that he's now trying to figure out if Lord Aaron, the guy who was the hand of the king prior to his death, came across the actual bastard son of Robert Baratheon, which would definitely change things, possibly for any of the Lannisters' plans. So possibly the
okay.
Lannisters may have. This is just my suspicion. I can't remember what exactly went down, but I believe this is also his suspicion. I mean, who else are you going to really turn to at this point in time and say, the walls are closing in on him? Who do you think is going to be the one to do them at this point, right?
Yeah,
Who's working their way into the royal system already? The Lannisters, right? So I
of
think that
course.
that's his suspicions, I would say, at this point in time anyways. But he has suspicions, and he says, I think that's Robert's bastard son. So the man who was helping him, he ends up taking this information that he delivers with him that he wants to give to Robert. and he brushes shoulders with Jamie, and Jamie has the chance to collect that information from him. But he's like, I don't fucking do favors for Lord Stark, so get the fuck out of here. Meanwhile, he's standing outside the door where
The
Robert's
best.
fucking like several women, and he's getting pissed off because like he makes me fucking stand guard here, where he's bagging all these. How many women do you think are in there right now? And he's like, I don't know, like 3. And they're
As he
fucking like,
insults, what does he say? As he insults my
5.
sister?
Yeah. so he's pissed, but he's pissed because not because of him fucking around with women behind it, because he's in love with his sister. He's like, this bastard is fucking all these women, and meanwhile I'm trying to fuck my sister. That's what he's mad about, Jay.
Yeah.
It's not because it's his sister. It's because that's the woman he loves that this guy is cheating on all these women with. That's what he's pissed about in that scene. So he's so distracted, he lets that information slip right out of his fingers. He could have had that information. And the guy's like, listen, I don't work for Stark. Get the fuck out of here, man. He talks with him, right? He's like,
So I don't think with the heart.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what ends up. That was pretty hilarious when that happened. I thought that was pretty brilliant of them to set that up where he could have actually got that mess, but it never gets delivered though. Robert still never finds that out. Ned fails in sending that message to him, at least for now, because he's busy in the room there. And from there, we got back to Castle Black. Jon says to his friends, we are now going to help Sam as well. We're going to protect him from the rest of the group so he doesn't get picked on, essentially. And if I see you guys,
he told him straight up how it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And Sir Alistair makes the point and embarrasses him after they won't actually properly attack him while they're training out there, Sam, because of the fact that Jon had this talk with them. And Jon's sitting there with a big shitting grin on his face, like, oh yeah, see, it looks like I got the run of the place to this guy, right? Because after he unsuccessfully, like, they're not hitting Sam back like to his satisfaction, right? And he makes a good point though. He's like, listen, guys, he's like, when you're going to be out there, you want this guy getting your back. He's like, this untrained fucking guy here. Like, he's basically like, you want this guy watching your back out there. All right. Like, he's like, that's what you're going to be faced with. He's like, you need to depend on each other. This guy is not doing it. Right. So, and then you kind of get a look from Jon, and yeah, they gotta train this guy, like, essentially, right? This guy is not doing it for them. And I think that's going to be problematic. That's what he's trying to say. Right. Then you cut back to him and Sam kind of hanging out there, and they're cleaning, they're cleaning and doing their thing, their chores, I guess. And Jon admits in this conversation about being a virgin while in conversation with Sam, because Sam's talking about how the fact that all the men from that were with them have gone out to the whorehouses essentially for the night. And
it's interesting reason why, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Go on.
And and like to your point, he talks about getting in his head about being a bastard and the fear of doing that to someone else if he were to hook up with one of these women, essentially creating another bastard child for somebody out there, right? So that's his reasoning as to why he got in his head and why he hasn't been able to seal the deal, because he's had opportunities, according to Jon. But Sam's too busy just making fun of him, like saying that he doesn't know what to do. He's like, oh, so you don't know where to put it, do you? Like, right? Like, he's basically, he's just busting his balls, right? And this is kind of where the scene where they kind of seems like they are becoming friends now. You know what I mean? Like, he's got his back. They're talking.
They're scrubbing the table there.
Yeah, they're admitting to, like, past their selves, like their private life and stuff like that. Because Sam's saying like he hasn't hooked up with anybody, and he's like, oh, I'm sure you've done it many times or whatever. And Jon admits that, no, actually I haven't. I've had the opportunity, and this is how I feel, and we'll see, right? So that's interesting. And then, Sir Alistair walks in there and, he warns them about the horrors of winter and that they're not prepared for it. Like, he's like, you guys joking around, you're doing your thing. I get it. You're having fun. But he's like, you guys haven't seen the things I've seen out there. He's like, it gets ugly, right? So he warns them. He's like, you got to step up. So.
Yeah, but they're still boys, man. They're not ready for the winter.
That's right. Yeah. And then he cut over to Daenerys. Daenerys talks about hitting her brother and the defiance and how he would not be a good leader. She speaks.
Starting to get interesting there.
That's right. Speaks to Jorah about this. Because the brother kind of comes at her, which I failed to mention earlier. They attack one another. He he kind of is figured out that he thinks that he sent that whore in his chambers basically to get information out of him or to lead him astray, essentially, because they're having their talks, for Daenerys and the whore now, and he's kind of like, who's in charge here? Like, I don't like how the way you're trying to dictate things. Like, I'm the king, and blah 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 blah. And they get up in each other's faces. She fights back. He punches her. She basically threatens him with his life if she touches her again. The Khaleesi, she's gonna get the fucking army to kill him. Yeah, so it's getting ugly right now between the brother and her, right? So it's interesting. And it looks like Jorah has her back, so like she's kind of confiding in him, saying like he's not a fit leader, this and that. So yeah, it's not looking good between these two, the relationship right now, right? So
he's starting to fall victim. He almost fell victim when he was in the tub with the whore there. That he just started almost falling victim to his emotions there for a second there with her. Hey, you notice he started to get a little bit.
Then he caught himself.
He caught himself. Yeah, and tried to act like a man again.
Like, you're here to do a job, like hop back on it. He's like,
Yeah.
right? He's like,
that was like the old school way. Get back on it, bitch.
Yeah, like, why the fuck am I talking to you about my feelings? Shut the fuck up, right?
Yeah, just do what you're here to do, and that's it.
He treats her like. And then we kind of lead into the last little part of the episode here. Lord Baelish, so basically the tournament is on right now. The tournament is happening finally in King's Landing. Some interesting things happen here. Lord Baelish, he speaks with Sansa on the sidelines, and Arya, they're at the tournament. He sits beside them. Arya asks why he's called Littlefinger, because that's Lord Baelish's nickname. And he kind of quickly mentions it's just because I called him from a small land called the Fingers, and I was a small person, a young child at that time, and I was small, and that's why they called me that.
Yeah.
Then they get into the fact you get to meet the Mountain. The Mountain, the Hound's older brother, okay? So you know the Hound now, Jay, as the Hound's watching from the sidelines, and he's jousting against another knight during this tournament who ends up killing him, okay?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, as they do, a medieval time style from one end to the other. They try to joust each other, and he gets him in the neck. He gets flown off the horse. He gets killed. This, again, huge fucking guy, the Mountain. He's called the Mountain. This guy's huge, this guy, right? He's a knight. And the older brother is that's the Hound's older brother, the other knight, the guy that's another big fucking guy that we've met already at this point. Mm-hmm. And then Lord Baelish tells Sansa the story of two brothers. The Hound was younger, and he was his older brother. And then one evening, he found him playing with his toy by the fire of a wooden knight. And he shoved his head into the fire and held it there. And then we actually get the origin story as to why the Hound's face is kind of disfigured on one side. And it's apparently from him and his brother, the Mountain, when they were younger, of him basically shoving his face in the fire, right, and burning it. So you can tell there's some sort of bad blood between these two, because as he's watching on the sidelines, you can tell that the Hound, like, hates this man, right? Like, the way he's looking at him. And again, like, the fact that there's two characters called the Hound and the Mountain, like, they're pretty awesome, man, with a history like that.
Like fucking wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Cersei, the queen, then visits Ned while the tournament's going on, because I guess he's not there. They talk about the wolves incident in passing. Cersei questions his purpose here, basically says to him, you're wasting your time. Robert's, terrible king, essentially. Like, she's not saying anything that's not true, but she just wants him to fucking get out of there, it seems like, right? And
he's always fucking hammered, even at the duel, you know what I mean? Like, he's just a pig.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's some idle threats there about killing their enemies. Like she says about, oh yeah, my father taught me to kill my enemies, and she's like, oh, so did mine, or whatever. So you could tell that there's there's the bad blood brewing between these two already as well, right?
I feel like she can be a bitch.
Yes.
I gotta keep my eye out for that one.
Yeah, yeah. I like your way, your line of thinking there, Jay.
Well, I mean, it's not that hard. Like, she's she's kind of poking her finger. She's poking the bear. I can see.
Yeah. And then we reach the the last scene of the episode. A great scene here. Tyrion, he's attending his whorehouses. He's at the bar area of one of the whorehouses, and he runs into Lady Stark, who he quickly exposes her presence of being
right away, man.
Right? He's like, oh, Lady Stark, what are you doing in his establishment? Pretty much exposes her.
She's
Yeah,
fucking.
go. Lady
Hey,
Stark turns to him and he's like, oh, yeah, he flaunts, he flaunts that, or she turns to him. He's like, oh, yeah, yeah. Then she busts out the fact that her ties with the other houses in this area run deep. He obviously has her mistaken.
yeah,
She starts calling out men that are in the fucking place at that
dude,
time.
I couldn't believe that.
Oh yeah, you know my father, or you know this one, and you know my family, and she's like, "What would you have my aid in this case?" Oh yes, yes, I would. My yeah, Lady Stark or whatever. Yeah, yes, of course, because everyone's just like when he thinks he's embarrassing her by exposing her when she's sitting there, right? Because
Yeah,
she's obviously trying to be like incognito.
yeah.
So in response, she starts going around the room and pointing out all these people that she has relations to in some sort or one way or the other. And she's like, well, and then she gets up. She accuses Tyrion as someone who this man came into our house as a guest and conspired to murder my son, and asked that he gets seized and that he's brought to Winterfell to receive the king's justice. All of a sudden, these men pull out their swords, and Tyrion's just like, fuck, like,
Oh,
so looks like Tyrion is in trouble as because she was going for the first Lannister she saw, essentially, it seems like in this episode, because she's been in hiding from them while they've been in King's Landing collecting information. But Tyrion kind of exposing her, that was the last straw, it seems like, and she fucking came right back at him, and now it looks like these men are going to assist them in taking Tyrion back to Winterfell with them. At least that's the way the episode ended, and that was a great ending, man. Like Tyrion is. She turned the tables on him, Jay.
he just was kind of like dumbfounded. He kind of was
Yeah.
like, oh,
What's
okay.
going on here?
Yeah.
I was just about to bag a whore. I don't know what's happening.
You know, like, he could have been going all night. That
Yeah.
guy, yeah, he's the man. But no, yeah, I seen that coming when he he says he's gonna stay at the whorehouse and he knew she was there. I kind of seen it coming. Like I was like, I wonder if he's gonna see her there. And sure enough, he did. And
Yeah, but
I didn't see her. I
but
didn't see that
yeah,
coming.
I mean, yeah, even I didn't remember that. But again, she like pulls his, he busted out that the fact that she's not no one, she's not just someone's wife. Like she
Yeah.
has a lot of like relations with a lot of people as well. Like,
Cool.
right?
Isn't her family like
Yes.
got something? Yeah, and I think that's the big thing.
Well, that's why Lord Baelish, he says he knew her for a long time to Sansa. And like I remember I told you last episode, I feel like he loved her. Like there's some storyline about her, like his love for her. And you can tell he cares a great deal for her at this point. But like, yeah, she has royal family too as well. That's the thing. Like there's a lot of these people that like even in passing you get introduced to in this show that but a lot of them have like some sort of like they're part of one of the kingdoms essentially, right? A lot of these people. So a lot of these people that you come across in the show, not everybody's no one. There is a bunch of no one people as well, people that are just characters that live out in the world that are just making their way. But there's a lot of people that have a lot of allegiances to a lot of different like royalty on this show too, right? So you got to remember that. If you claim whatever house in certain parts of the world, or say that you're, if someone else has allegiance to your house or whatever else, you can find help. You know what I mean? Like there's ways of working your way around this place. But in a place like King's Landing, where like the Lannisters run deep right now, especially because they're married to the king, like that's not a good place. That's not a place you want to flaunt your, you know what I mean? You don't want to fucking bust out some
power.
Exactly, because you don't have it there, right? But if they're in Winterfell, that's why I think everyone suspects that because they're not in Winterfell that they have no power, the Starks, around the realm, right? Which is not the case. Like they do.
It's still a well-known name, and
exactly. So
they don't fuck around, sort of thing.
And she's even calling on I forgot her actual fucking last name. She wasn't even calling on Stark allegiances here. She was speaking on her own.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think she was speaking on her own family in a sense.
She is. That's what she says. Like you wouldn't like, because I think of her father or somebody important or something like that. Because that's why she asked that one man who busts out the sword on him there at the end, is that would you you'd have my back, essentially, like, you know what I mean? Not in so many words, like, obviously she says it differently, but she's like, yeah, you got my back, I got a problem. Yes, I do. Okay, yeah, well, this man right here is a traitor to our family, so like you're gonna help me right now take this guy back, right? And so like I liked that, man, how she turned the tables. But the problem is, like, Tyrion didn't meet, other than embarrassing her, Tyrion isn't the one that you want. Like, he hasn't done anything.
He
Right?
hasn't done anything. He's trying to help your son, if anything, have some ride horses again.
But I think it goes back to the dagger story. I think that's why. Because
Yeah,
he was in
because
it,
she thinks
they
it's
said it
his.
belonged to him at one point. That's what Baelish
Yeah,
said. Remember? Like that
yeah,
was
I
his
remember that part.
so from last episode. So I think that's why I think she suspects that he has something to do with it. But fucking poor Tyrion has nothing to do with this right now, right? So
He just wants to go bang some more. Like you said, fuck, man.
there's also a man that's in the bar in this scene that shows attention to this scenario that is yet to speak. That's going to be a character moving forward as well. I think
I didn't notice that. I just noticed everybody's because
so
everybody standing up just throws you and we're
there's a
pulling
man
up their swords.
there's a man that wasn't involved so far at the end of this episode that is going to be, I think, part of whatever goes down. So we'll have to see
Have to
next
keep it up.
episode. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll have to keep up with that one. But it's starting to get easier to follow now that I've met the characters a few times here in this. So I'm starting to get. Some of them are
Good.
still throwing my head face, like throwing me off when you say Baelish, when you say this and that, like those ones. I know who they are. I remember hearing it. Like I see that. I'm just trying to put the face to them. Right.
Yeah.
The other ones I got no problem now. I'm starting to figure it all out with the Lannisters and with the
It get
Starks
like
and with
that
their
with
family.
everybody though, because like
Yeah.
after we keep saying the same names every episode, you're gonna start connecting like their face to the name, being like, "Oh yeah, that's that guy," right?
Yeah. I
And then
usually have my own little slang name for them, but that's yeah, like the itty bitty Lannister and that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
other than that, I mean, I,
Lannister, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, other than that, I don't.
So what do you think of this episode though? Overall, this specific
Interesting,
one.
interesting. Like I said, it's a quick bridge for hopefully a better episode, like a different style episode next one, right? Because I'd like to. It was almost like a, you know, see what's happening while stuff is not so much going down yet, but it's kind of like like you said in the beginning, filling in characters and stuff like that, and seeing maybe bonds, how much more they're being formed, and who's kind of talking with who, and you know what I mean. So we get to see that kind of
What's your
in this one.
what was your favorite part of this episode?
My favorite part is always the horse, but I mean, no. Other than that, I liked when the like you said with the daughter. And when they're doing this, when she's doing the things that she told him straight up that she wants to be
Yes,
a knight, or she doesn't want to be a princess or marry
right.
somebody rich, or you know what I mean. She wants to be her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like that was the most meaningful part. Maybe besides
Which is
and
great because
with a twist
it's such a small scene, but yeah,
scene,
I
but
agree.
it's intense. Yeah, you can really acknowledge it. But also with Tyrion being a nice guy and trying to like, you can show his smarts because he designed that fucking thing for the horse, right?
Yes,
Which is crazy, and he even knows that you got to raise the horse from
yes,
a little horse to a pony, basically, to a fucking horse, so that it fits the kid's body. They
yes.
raise them together, so that'd be interesting to see where that goes moving forward.
Yeah, I would add to that. Like, I liked the I liked them explaining the origin of the brothers, the Mountain and the Hound. I really liked that moment a lot.
I didn't catch that 100% the whole stat story, maybe because I was just interested in that whole night scene, like that whole fighting kind of.
Yeah, well, that whole scene, like
Cool.
I
Yeah,
like that scene. Yeah, I like that whole scene of the tournament, right? And yeah, and I actually even liked I mean, I always like all the Tyrion parts, but the Arya part you mentioned was really good. And I kind of just like the investigation that Ned kind of went into in this one, trying to learn of what that kid did prior to his death. That was some interesting stuff too, I think, because um, I like how he's piecing that together for himself. Like everybody else is just taking it as is, and
yeah.
he kind of was just like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense." Like these are it's so it's so bad because like it's like either everyone's an idiot or they just don't care enough to actually look into this shit because it's so clear that this guy obviously just didn't die of some ill. I mean, don't get me wrong. Back then, it was like you would get illnesses sometimes and
You
die.
get a cold and die like the last. Yeah,
But I think like it's just like come on, guys. Like when I think it's more so like no one gives a shit. Like they're just like, oh, okay, like he's dead. Like you know what I mean? Like I think
yeah.
like if you took like 2 seconds to actually investigate this a little bit, you could see that it's clear that this man did not die of like natural causes, right? So I think it's interesting that like Ned's on the case in this. He's trying to put all this information together because like no one cares to reveal the truth. It seems like in
I
this,
noticed
they're
that.
all bastards, right? They're
It's
all
just
like because everyone's in it for their own gain. Like
yeah,
everybody that's sitting at that table wants to be the king or be put in a position to be next to the king or benefit from it. You know what I mean? So like I think Ned's the only one that's actually genuine, that's there, that's trying to do right by him and do a good job. And
yeah.
he's like failing. He's failing in doing so far. So it's kind of sad in a way. It's just like, oh my god, this guy's like actually trying and he's getting nowhere, right?
You know when he was when what it was a Snow Jon Snow that had the dog that had the wolf beside him too when he scared when he told made sure that nobody touched the sand.
Yes.
Right? That was a pretty deep part too. Like, yeah, I don't know where the fuck the wolf came from all of a sudden.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I always wondering. Like, he just goes like this, and they're like right there. Like, where do they come from?
I think they
They follow them around. They make him look like loosely following them around.
it seems like they have some sort of a connection, the wolves in this.
Maybe this is the magical part of that. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just still because I was like, where the fuck did he come from? I don't remember him walking with them all the way
Yeah.
to the Winterfell
Well,
or whatever
well,
to the
I will,
wall.
I will, I will, I will get you to think back, Jay, on the scene where the wolf dies at the end of that episode,
Yeah, I
and
know. I was like, isn't that the same
that
one?
as soon as that connection is severed, Bran jumped up out of the bed awake.
Yeah. But this is what I don't understand. But I felt like that white one that he had beside him was the same one.
No, that's not the same one. No,
Oh, okay.
he had the
I know he
runt
had his own.
John had the runt of the litter, if you
Yeah,
recall, right? But they
yeah.
all have
Didn't look like a runt.
But I think that no, they're fucking huge now. The dogs, they're full out wolves now, right? They're dire wolves.
Huskies. Well, huskies. We'll call
They
them.
call them dire wolves,
Yeah,
right?
I know. I know.
Basically, yeah, they're mostly animated half the time. Those dogs because they're not that huge. These fucking dogs, right?
Well, yeah, they got to make them a little bigger. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know. I mean, they could get vicious like that, though.
I think they have some sort of a special bond to these animals. I think, like I told you
Family.
earlier on before, when we talked about this, before you learned more about them, I had mentioned to you, think of the dogs as their dragons, essentially.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. Did they just come out? Did they just pop out of nowhere? Kind of like how the dragons all of a sudden they just
Yeah,
fly out of the clouds.
they have a connection with the dragons. I think
Yeah,
that they have a connection with the dogs. These guys now, the Starks, essentially, right? So
nice.
yeah, they're good protectors of the Stark. So yeah, so good stuff, man. It's
Be nice to see this how it goes, where it's going from here.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think episode 5 of season 1 is next, so you guys will hear that from us next week. But let me just take a look at the episode name here. I'll tee that up here for you guys. What do we have in
Let's say,
store? Did you ever see how many episodes are in the season?
yeah, 10.
It is 10. Okay.
So season 5 is the Wolf and the Lion.
That's the next episode. Okay, there you go. So season 1, episode 5, The Wolf and the Lion. That'll be our episode next week that we'll be discussing, guys. And yeah, let us know if you guys have been checking these out. Let us know what you think of this show. This has been a lot of fun so far. We've been keeping them under an hour, which has been really good, I think, on our part. We're trying
Yeah.
to keep it a little shorter. And and then we'll be getting into that episode next week. And also, if you are a fan of Game of Thrones and you've yet to tell us, let us know. If I already know that you are, I might hit you up anyways. We do want to probably get some guests going into season 2 and onwards.
That should be interesting.
On the show as well. We'll get some guests on here, some people that are also fans of Game of Thrones. If there's specific episodes you guys enjoy out there and you want to be on the show, let me know which ones those would be, and we'll reserve them for you. We already got some people interested and have talked about which episodes they wanted to talk with us.
Oh, they've specific episodes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? We specific episodes. I think that Game of Thrones fans really enjoy. There's a couple at the top of my head that I can think of throughout the whole series that would be good ones to have guests on for, because there's some big moments, Jay. There's some big moments to come. So,
well, I believe you.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
I'm glad to hear you're still enjoying it, man. And yeah, we'll get into the next one next week.
Yeah, we will for sure.
Okay, everybody.
Can't wait, man.
We'll see you next week. Later.
So, brother.
Winter is coming.
a lion and a wolf.